They found me asleep under my desk once, face down on a server manual, half a Slim Jim hanging out of my mouth like a sad, salty cigar. That was 8 years ago, during the infamous Q4 collapse, when every automated payroll report duplicated itself and HR accidentally paid out $2.3 million in bonuses to interns. I fixed it by lunchtime and nobody said a word. No thank you, no high five, not even a stale muffin from Breakroom Brenda. Just silence, like I was a janitor cleaning up a mess no one wanted to admit existed. That was my whole career. 14 spotless years spent in the fluorescent shadows of a Fortune 100 logistics giant. I built the nerve center, line by line, script by script. Redundancy protocols that'd make a NASA engineer blush. Custom firewalls layered like an onion dipped in paranoia. Nobody else touched the root structure. Hell, most didn't even know it existed. The interns just called it the black box. The executives? They called it working. As long as the lights stayed on and the dashboards kept blinking, no one cared how. Just that. I didn't mind. Not at first. I liked being the ghost in the shell. I liked walking the hallways in scuffed boots and a hoodie while sales bros strutted past me in tailored jackets they couldn't pronounce. I liked solving outages before anyone knew they started. I liked the quiet power of it all. Then came Connor. 3-piece suit, fresh MBA stench, teeth too white to trust. The kind of guy who called it optics when he fired someone and synergy when he hired his reflection. They made him COO in June. By July, he was swinging his limp authority around like a golf club at a funeral. We're modernizing infrastructure, he said at the first all-hands, like he discovered digital transformation in a fortune cookie. Legacy systems are holding us back. Translation. I was holding them back. The first thing he did was schedule a process audit. He didn't even look at my systems before declaring them archaic. His favorite insult was non-scalable. Said it like a slur. I overheard him in the break room whispering to his golden boy analyst, "We need lean thinkers, not code hoarders who've been camping in the same cubicle since the iPhone 4. That stung. Not because he was wrong about the iPhone, but because he didn't even ask what the system did. I built it like a damn cathedral. It wasn't flashy, it was functional. Custom scripts, layered permission trees, rolling encryption protocols, sandboxed failovers. And yes, there was legacy code. Know why? Because it worked. Because while Connor was still pissing Mountain Dew in Econ 101, I was figuring out how to isolate ransomware vectors before ransomware was a term the C-suite could spell. Still, I smiled through it. Professional. Silent. A slow exhale of filtered rage every time he announced another strategic pivot. I watched him fire 3 of my best team leads in the name of cost efficiency, and replace them with grinning yes-men who thought a subnet mask was a COVID precaution. So I started copying files. Not out of spite, yet. Out of instinct. Logs, system notes, version maps, command trees, documentation no one had ever asked for but that held the skeleton key to everything. I stored them off-site. Not on some cloud, real off-site. Private server. Power backup. 2-factor auth tied to my personal key. Just in case. And then there was the old script. 011 KS. Written 13 years ago after a late-night DDoS attack that almost cost us the FedEx contract. A silent failover built to hardlock core services in the event of catastrophic breach. Back then it was a precaution. But I'd updated it over the years. Polished it. Buried it deep under 10 layers of do not touch code. It didn't delete. It didn't destroy. It locked. And only I knew the pattern. I remember walking past Connor's glass office one Thursday afternoon, watching him jab a finger at some dashboard, barking to his assistant about efficiency benchmarks. He didn't look at me. He never did. But I looked at him, and something old and quiet inside me clicked. They thought I was invisible. They were about to learn the difference between silence and absence that I knew something was off the second my keycard made that pathetic denied beep at the security door. It was 3:47 p.m. on a Friday. That's not the hour for drama. That's the hour for quietly watching the clock pretend to move. But when the red light blinked back at me like a middle finger from a vending machine, I turned, and there she was. Janine from HR. Clipboard clutched like a Bible, Face tight, lips pre-pressed into the "it's not personal" position. She gestured toward conference room B like I didn't know where walk the plank meetings took place. "Let's talk," she said. But she didn't talk. She read. Like a lawyer afraid I'd sue her for adding extra emotion. Effective immediately. Due to departmental restructuring, position redundancy, strategic realignment. The words ran together like wet ink. I heard none of them. My eyes locked on the reflection of the COO standing behind the glass, hands in pockets, watching like he was inspecting an old vending machine before tossing it in a dumpster. When it was over, she slid a cardboard box across the table. Staples brand. Still smelled like toner and broken promises. I didn't say a word. Didn't ask for an explanation. Didn't even fake surprise. What was I gonna do? Beg? Throw a chair? No. That's not how ghosts react. That's how flesh and blood employees respond. I hadn't been one of those for years. But when Connor strolled in to put a cherry on the corporate ejection sundae, that's when it got interesting. "Look," he started, voice rich with condescension disguised as kindness. "This isn't about you. It's about direction. Vision. We need people who can scale." I just looked at him. Not through him. At him. I wanted that moment to sear into his cocky, cologne-drenched brain. The man who never missed a system audit. Who kept the back end humming through hurricanes and ransomware scares. Who'd been paged during his mother's funeral because the data sync failed, and still fixed it before the reception ended. That man was now being replaced with what? A 6-slide PowerPoint and a SaaS subscription? He clapped me on the shoulder like a coach benching a third-string quarterback. "You'll land on your feet." I didn't respond. Just gathered the box, walked the long hallway past the blinking server room, and paused. Behind the glass, rack lights blinking like heartbeat monitors. Row after row of machines I'd built from bare steel and spit. I'd spent more nights in that room than in my marriage bed. It had no windows. No worms. But it was mine. It was loyal. I nodded to it like an old war buddy. Then I stepped into the elevator. No one said goodbye. Outside, the sun had the nerve to be warm. I drove home on autopilot, box on the passenger seat. Filled with the detritus of a forgotten life. Coffee-stained mug, extra mouse, a USB with my wedding playlist on it. Divorced 3 years now, funny enough. A printout of an XKCD comic someone once left on my desk that just said, "I fix things you don't know are broken in ways you can't understand." That one I kept. Back home, I didn't cry. Didn't rage. Didn't call anyone. I went to the basement, flicked on the old server tower I'd kept running for personal projects, and sat down at a station no one else even knew existed. Terminal booted. I logged in. Air was still. My breath sounded louder than the whir of the fans. I typed. CD up. Archie-scripts. Enter. Ls. There it was. 011ks.sh. Last modified, 11 years 8 months, 13 days ago. I stared at the file like an old revolver buried in a closet. Not a weapon. Just a tool no one thought they'd ever need again. And I thought. They wanted scale? Fine. Let's scale the silence. The last time I touched that script, my knees didn't creak and my wife still wore her ring. The company was still family-owned then. Before the IPO, before the stock options turned the execs into paper gods. Back when I built systems with a thermos of gas station coffee in one hand and a soldering iron in the other. I named it 011KS like some inside joke only I understood. KS for kill switch. 011 because I used to love binary humor. Thought I was clever back then. Thought they'd care. I hovered over it now, older, emptier, the glow of the screen casting tired shadows on a face that hadn't smiled since the Friday box. It wasn't a nuke. Nothing so crude. The script didn't destroy, it detoured. Every service, email, payroll, operations, logistics, internal messaging, would still appear online. Lights on, ports open. But the access paths? Mutated. The config files? Encrypted under a dynamic hash sequence tied to a credential keychain no one could guess, because it didn't exist in any company directory. It existed in me. My credentials weren't usernames. They were behaviors. Uptime frequency. Terminal access speed. Syntax habits. Anomaly pattern detection based on my keystroke rhythm and command order. Think of it like a fingerprint. But for ghosts. I never meant it as a backdoor. It was insurance. I'd seen too many outside consultants poke around our systems with greasy fingers and clueless grins. Too many CTOs try to modernize, with off-the-shelf garbage that couldn't hold a candle to what I'd built by hand. The script was protection. A guardian. Now it was my revenge. I opened it in Nano. No GUI. No flashy interface. Just lines of dense, angry code from a younger me who hadn't yet been buried by silence. Line 42. Trigger_user_key equals exe_path/usr_token/seq_scan. Line 73. Failover_out equals /dev/null. Line 101. If auth_match then locall. Phi. Beautiful. Elegant. Untouchable. My cursor blinked beneath the final comment line I'd written years ago. Hashtag if you're reading this and you're not me. Good luck. My hand didn't shake. My breath didn't hitch. I just hit. --011-ks.sh. Enter. There was a pause. The kind that hums. Then the tower lights flickered. One server blinked red. Then another. The hum turned into a low, syncopated whine. The kind that tells you something is happening deep in the system's bones. A heartbeat shifting its rhythm. Then rebooting. My screens cascaded into terminal windows auto-closing, virtual environments collapsing like folding chairs. Security demons reinitializing. SSH sessions ending themselves like polite suicides. And then nothing. Stillness. No alarms. No errors. Just quiet. The system hadn't crashed. It had retreated. Locked itself behind a wall with no door. A bunker only I could open. Because I was the door. I leaned back in the chair, the soft whir of the fans returning to baseline, like the servers themselves were catching their breath. It hit me then. Not pride. Not vengeance. Grief. 14 years and this was how it ended. Not with a plaque or a party or even a damn email. Just a box. A smirk. And a script no one believed existed because no one bothered to ask what I actually did. They made me obsolete. I said aloud to no one. Then I whispered, let's see them try to replace this. Connor strutted into the office that Monday morning like a man arriving to accept his own statue. Latte in one hand, Bluetooth earpiece jammed into his head like he thought someone important might call. His tailored jacket had the faint shine of someone who doesn't sweat, because he's never had to. By 8:07 a.m., the first Slack message dropped. Anyone else having login issues? By 8:12, the IT group chat was lighting up like a Christmas tree on fire. HR system not responding to queries. Ops dashboard showing green lights but won't refresh. Client portals live, but no data streaming. Backups mounted but empty. What the hell? Connor didn't notice the panic at first. Too busy breathing his own executive oxygen. He was on a call with some investor, probably talking up the tech refresh he'd launched by firing the guy who built the damn tech. At 8:15, someone from IT tried to pull him aside. We've got a problem. Then solve it, Connor said, smiling like he was swatting a fly. The problem was there was nothing to solve. Everything was technically working. Servers were online. Dashboards were glowing. Login screens loaded like clockwork. But they were hollow. Function without access. The doors were visible, but every key had been melted. It was like someone had turned the company into a museum exhibit. You could look, but you couldn't touch. By 8:30, Connor was off the phone and starting to sweat. By 8:45, the CEO was pulled from a breakfast meeting with a potential logistics client when their order dashboard showed all zeros. By 9 a.m., the C-suite war room was activated. I imagine the glass walls were starting to feel like a fishbowl. Executives pacing in circles while department heads stammered that yes, the systems were online, but no, they couldn't explain why nothing worked. Connor tried to bluff his way through it. Probably a patch delay. Restart the services. Check container logs. Someone did. Nothing changed. By 9:30, the customer service lines were melting. Clients screaming about late shipments, frozen orders, blank dashboards. Distribution partners threatening penalties. Vendors asking why wire transfers hadn't cleared. Someone asked, "Could this be ransomware?" But it wasn't. There was no ransom. No encryption message. No demands. Just silence. At 10 a.m. sharp, a black SUV rolled into the lot. The consultant. Not some dweeby code monkey. No, this was the guy you call when the CIO starts to cry in a stairwell. Xfong, 6 figures for a morning. Smells like Palo Alto and power. Walked in wearing sunglasses like he expected fire. By then, Connor's tie was gone, and the CEO had broken into his third sugar-free Red Bull. I wasn't there, of course. I was sitting on my back porch in a flannel I hadn't worn since Thanksgiving. Mug of burnt diner roast in one hand, old binoculars in the other. Watching a pair of woodpeckers fight over a feeder, like it was the last branch on earth. The phone buzzed once. Then again. I didn't check it. Instead, I let the morning sun warm my neck and listened to the sound of a world trying to reboot without its ghost. I thought about my old desk. About the humming servers. About the blinking lights behind glass walls, now blinking to no one. I thought, they'll bring in someone smart. Smart enough to admire the structure. Smart enough to realize what's missing. And I smiled, not wide, not evil. Just a small, quiet curl of the lip that hadn't moved in weeks. Because now they were looking at the cathedral. And realizing the architect had left the keys with the wind. The consultant's name was Victor Lang. I remembered it because I'd once read a blog post of his titled Legacy Systems and the Lazarus Effect. Thought it was pompous but smart. The kind of guy who wore loafers with no socks and smelled faintly of eucalyptus and contempt. But I'll give him this. The man could read a system like a psychic reads palms, quick, clinical, devastating. He plugged in at 10:12 a.m. First impression, a smirk. The kind consultants give when they assume they're dealing with amateur hour. By 10:20, he was inside the mainframe, at least what he thought was the mainframe. It's modular. Interesting. You built it in layers. Not bad. The IT team hovered behind him like interns watching a magician. Connor stood nearby, arms crossed, trying to look both annoyed and in control. He had no clue what Victor was actually doing. He just wanted to see progress. Movement. Anything. By 10:32, Victor's brow furrowed. He clicked. Typed. Waited. What the hell? He muttered. By 10:40, the smirk was gone. Replaced with something sharper. Not fear yet, but the awareness that he was swimming in deeper water than advertised. All right, he said slowly, tapping the side of his screen. Who designed this backend? Someone from IT stammered. Most of it was internal. Over time. A legacy staff. No, Victor cut in. This isn't legacy. It's layered. Intentionally obfuscated. Security protocols running in parallel across isolated subprocesses. The architecture's recursive. Who actually wrote this? Connor tried to laugh it off. One of our former sys architects. He was here a while. Why? Victor turned, expression unreadable. What's his name? Todd. Todd Haskins. Victor blinked. And where's Todd? We let him go, Connor replied, voice flattening. Last Friday. That's when it happened. Victor didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then he leaned back slowly, hands off the keyboard like the terminal had turned radioactive. Well, he said quietly. You're fucked. Silence. Connor blinked. Excuse me. Victor tapped the side of his laptop like it was a coffin lid. You didn't fire an employee. You deleted root access to a custom-built, self-modulating, dynamically locked infrastructure. This system, this was written around a behavioral authentication protocol. Not biometric. Not password. Behavioral. That means there's no override. No recovery path. No one can access the control layers unless they are him. Isn't there some way to reverse engineer? No. Victor snapped. This isn't a Damwix site. This is bespoke architecture with recursive shielding. Every access request triggers a validation loop tied to his keystroke signature. I've never seen anything like it. You didn't hire a sysadmin. You hired a paranoid genius. And then you threw him out. Connor's mouth opened. Then closed. Then opened again. The room stayed silent. Somewhere in that glass box of executive ambition, it hit him. He hadn't replaced me with efficiency. He'd replaced me with nothing. Back at my house, I was microwaving day-old Chinese. Kung Pao chicken extra spicy, enough MSG to stun a bowl. The microwave dinged just as I leaned over the sink and checked the log pings from the basement server. Unsurprisingly, someone had tried to run a brute force entry. 3 tries. Fail. Fail. Lockout engaged. I chuckled. Not loud. Not mocking. Just warm. The kind of laugh you let out when the world finally catches up to the thing you already knew. That for all their talk of modernization, of scalability, of strategy, they never once tried to understand the machine. And now the machine had shut the door. Not out of spite, but because that's what it was designed to do. Protect itself. From numbed-up-by noon, the CEO's patience had evaporated into the stale recycled air of the executive floor. He'd already paced a hole in the Berber carpet, his face blotchy with frustration, one eye twitching every time someone said the word system. Connor stood in front of the war table, tie loosened, jaw tight, trying to steer the narrative like a kid who just discovered the steering wheel isn't connected to the wheels. It's legacy lockouts, he muttered again like a prayer. Old protocols, redundant loops, undocumented endpoints. Probably a cascade conflict from a recent patch. Victor, the consultant, didn't even bother looking up from his terminal. Nope. Excuse me. Connor snapped. Victor sighed and leaned back, folding his arms like a disappointed professor at a remedial student's presentation. This wasn't some random lockout. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. What's failed is your access. He turned to the CEO. This entire architecture was built around a master key protocol. Not your standard credential ladder. This one's tied to a live behavioral auth-chain, adaptive. The system evaluates access attempts by matching them to one individual's usage fingerprint. And you're saying? The CEO asked, voice brittle. I'm saying Todd Haskins is the key. Someone from compliance, probably a junior counsel who'd never seen a day of real risk before, whispered too loudly. Isn't that illegal? To set up a system no one else can operate? Victor raised an eyebrow. Illegal? No. Unwise? Maybe. But I've read some of his logs now. This wasn't a sabotage. It's standard failover logic tied to breach containment protocols. If the master key is removed, the system locks down to prevent unauthorized access. Legal perked up. So you're saying it was always intended to do this? Victor nodded. And it's documented. Thoroughly. The logs show he'd updated the script regularly. No one else asked for admin docs. No one audited the architecture. No one even touched it for 7 years. The room deflated. Like someone let the air out of the NBA. That's when Connor finally snapped. He pulled out his phone, retreated to the hallway, and called me. I let it go to voicemail. Hey Todd, it's Connor. Look, we might need your help. No hard feelings, right? Just, call me when you can. We're having some trouble with the old systems. We'd, appreciate your insight. He sounded like a man trying to apologize without admitting he ever did anything wrong. That limp tone executives use when they realize they're not the apex predator anymore. Just another suit in the food chain. I played the message once. Then again. Just to hear the crack in his voice when he said appreciate. Then I deleted it. Didn't even save the number. Instead, I laced up my boots, grabbed my thermos, and stepped outside. The air had that sharp, clean smell you only get after a thunderstorm. When the world feels rinsed and wrung out. I walked the trail behind my neighborhood. Gravel crunching underfoot, birds arguing in the trees. A breeze cut across the back of my neck like a blessing. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger's a fire. It burns fast. Leaves smoke and ash and a mess to clean up. This wasn't fire. This was ice. Still. Cold. Final. Serene contempt, I'd call it. The kind of calm that only comes when you watch a man build a ladder with no rungs, climb it anyway, then act shocked when gravity has a vote. They wanted a scalable system? Well, they got one. They just never imagined that I was the scaling factor. And now they were locked out of the kingdom they never bothered to learn how to rule. Tuesday morning. The executive suite was quieter than a church funeral with no mourners. Legal had finished their review overnight. The memo they dropped on the boardroom table read more like a eulogy than a briefing. No evidence of malicious code injection. No indication of system compromise. Protocols executed per existing security policy parameters. Origin trace, internal. Trigger event, removal of credentialed user. Translation? The kill switch wasn't an attack. It was a design feature. And the man they fired had been the firewall. Victor was still on site, half out of pity, half because he hadn't seen something this beautiful in years. He walked them through the system's architecture like a museum guide narrating a tragic sculpture. This isn't sabotage, he said, clicking through encrypted config trees. This is exactly how it's supposed to behave when it detects an administrative compromise. He didn't break it. He locked it. Just like you'd want it to if someone breached the system. A compliance director, a real one, not some risk-averse middle manager, spoke up. So when he was let go, Victor nodded. The system interpreted it as a threat event. Executed lockdown protocol. Perfectly. Elegantly. Legally. The COO, Connor, sat there with his jaw set so tight it could have cracked a molar. He tried one last gasp of gaslight. This isn't scalable. It's a vendor lock-in wrapped in paranoia. Victor gave him a look like a disappointed math teacher. Scalable? This isn't a WordPress blog. This was mission-critical infrastructure running at 99.99% uptime for over a decade with zero breaches. You want scale? Try understanding what was built before you throw away the only person who knew how it worked. By mid-afternoon, the CEO had been on 2 separate Zoom calls with shareholder reps and insurance auditors. The tone wasn't angry, it was panicked. Phrases like disclosure risk, client confidence erosion, and board accountability started circulating like storm clouds. Someone leaked the incident to a journalist. Not the juicy parts, just enough to raise eyebrows. Company faces internal tech crisis after sudden staff change. That headline was enough to trigger a dip in the stock. Nothing catastrophic, but enough that the investor Slack channels started chirping. Connor's name was suddenly being whispered behind closed doors. Once hailed as a bold modernization force, now he was the guy who triggered a systems blackout during a peak logistics cycle. His credibility wasn't just questioned. It was priced. And outside of that circus, I was in sweatpants, sitting on the back deck, peeling an orange like a man with nowhere to be and no one to impress. The air was crisp, the birds louder than usual. My dog snored at my feet. Then my phone buzzed. LinkedIn, new message, Sandra Koenig, VP of Infrastructure at Larkwell Systems. Itot. Heard about what happened. If you're open to a chat, we'd love to talk. We're building something ambitious and could use your insight. First-class flights waiting. Just say when. I stared at the message for a moment. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like choice. After 14 years of being the man in the server room, the shadow behind the screen, the guy who everyone relied on but no one noticed, suddenly, the world had tilted. Not because I kicked it. Because they forgot who was holding the balance. And now I wasn't just wanted. I was the only one who could decide who got to turn the lights back on. The email came through late Wednesday night. Sent at 11:42 p.m., which meant 2 things. 1, legal had finally finished scrubbing every document I'd ever touched. And 2, Connor was officially in panic mode. Subject line, transition opportunities. Inside was a bouquet of corporate desperation. After reviewing recent events, we recognize the unique position you held in our infrastructure. We'd like to discuss reinstatement under revised terms, including a significant performance bonus and full consultant support. We deeply value your expertise. No apology. No ownership. Just strategic backpedaling soaked in lawyer-approved wording. I didn't respond. Not yet. The next morning, my flight left at 8:10 a.m. First class. Champagne before wheels up. A personal driver picked me up at the gate in Denver and drove me an hour into the mountains, where a black glass chalet waited like a Bond villain's weekend home. Larkwell Systems didn't mess around. Sandra Koenig met me at the door herself. VP of Infrastructure, rumored to have turned down CTO offers from 2 major players because she wasn't done building yet. Her handshake was firm, her tone warm, her first sentence honest. We don't want to use what you built. We want to learn how you think. The next 3 hours were unlike any meeting I'd ever sat through. No buzzwords. No fake urgency. Just whiteboards, strong coffee, and smart people asking smart questions. Sandra didn't talk about scale. She talked about integrity, of design, of purpose, of people. Said she read every line of code I'd written that Victor could salvage from the audit dump. You built something designed to outlive you, she said. That kind of thinking? It's rare. And it's exactly what we need. That night, as the fire crackled and snow dusted the treetops, I checked my phone. 2 voicemails from Connor. 1 from legal. And 1 final email from the CEO himself. No subject line. Just a single sentence. Please help us. I sat with that for a long moment. Let it hang in the air like a chorus from a song they didn't understand the lyrics to. Then I opened a new message. Typed slowly. Carefully. No heat. No flairies. Just truth. When you saw me as a cost, I became your firewall. Now, I'm your ransom. Then I hit send. Didn't wait for a reply. Didn't need to. I walked back to the window, looked out over the frozen treetops, and let the silence settle in my chest like armor. There was no gloating in me. No high from the reversal. Just control. Clean, quiet, surgical control. The kind they never saw coming. Because it didn't wear a suit. Didn't speak in buzzwords. Didn't ask for permission. It simply watched. Waited. And when the time came, typed 1 line of code, and rewrote the rules. The boardroom was colder than I remembered. Not in temperature, though someone clearly kept the thermostat set to fiscal anxiety, but in mood. That sterile hush, where money and ego sit around pretending not to flinch. 10 chairs. 9 filled. I took the 10th. Late deliberately. Connor avoided my eyes. He was thinner now. Paler. The confidence had drained out of him like air from a slow-leaking tire. His suit looked expensive, but on him it wore like penance. The CEO gave a tight nod. No one else spoke. In the center of the table, a laptop. Brand new. No stickers. No esmudjes. The kind of machine picked out by someone who doesn't know what a machine needs, just what it costs. I opened it. Typed 2 keys. Paused. Then typed. init_seek. Trustpath equals haskins.sys. Unlock all. The screen flickered. Then came the ripple. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. No fireworks. No confetti. Just windows opening calmly. Dashboards loading. Terminals unlocking. Database queues catching up like a river thawing after a long winter. 1 by 1, the lights came back on. Green. 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 System check complete. Integrity, 100%. Silence filled the room, not stunned but reverent. Like a church where the miracle just happened, and no one's quite sure if they're allowed to clap. Victor leaned in over my shoulder, looked at the scrolling logs, and exhaled like a man who'd just seen a ghost forgive its killer. Jesus, he whispered. That was beautiful. I said nothing. Just closed the lid. Stood up. Pulled a check from the envelope in front of me. High 6 figures. Nonda. No reire close. No strings. Just a payout. For unlocking what they never bothered to understand. Connor tried to say something. His lips twitched like a man choking on his own apology. I gave him a glance. Not long, not hostile. Just final. I turned. Walked out. No handshake. No thank you. No backwards glance. The elevator ride down was silent. I watched the numbers tick from floor 40 to the lobby like the last few pages of a book I'd already memorized. Outside, the sky was sharp and blue. Crisp fall wind cutting through concrete canyons. I slid my phone into my jacket. Somewhere, Larkwell was prepping my new office. But for now, I just walked. Let the city move around me. No bike. No pague. No emergency tickets. Just steps on pavement and the hollow echo of what used to be. They'd never understand what they lost. And that's the point. They didn't need to. Final thought. Quiet and clean. I gave them 14 spotless years. They gave me a cardboard box. I gave them silence. And in that silence, they finally heard me.